Hey, so thanks for the response video. This is just gonna be a quick response video to yours. So yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with everything that you stated. Um, and the whole philosophy, the new philosophy thing at the end of the video was just, a semantic sort of thing. We basically agree, with Krishnamurti. What he was saying was, we're not trying to design some kind of new thing, as if a philosophy is an object. Um, I guess you could say when we use philosophy, I mean, the word itself just means love of wisdom. But I guess we can interpret that differently. And again, that's a language um, difference. Not necessarily always a barrier, but definitely a difference. And that can be a barrier because then we'll go back and forth about something, and we won't even understand if we're even talking about the same sort of thing. But yeah. So philosophy, I guess, when I mentioned that, I meant it in a very, very general way, talking about generals and specifics, but a very general kind of, a new attitude towards life and the world that can be applied to any kind of field, whether it's social science, hard science, or philosophy, or any of that. But yeah, basically, I'm putting another video in here that your video reminded me of. Uh, Alan Watts, Prickles and Goo, basically talks about the same kind of thing. Um, the current paradigm in scientific thinking is to be all prickles and no goo. Goo is for the opening and closing statements of the latest scientific bestseller. Um, Goo is for the masses, to sort of lead them into the hard science, but no more and nothing more than that. It's poetic, it's nice, and this sort of misappreciation of the gooey aspect, the soft spots, the generalities, the vagueness. Um, like I said, it's sort of almost a misappreciation in mainstream culture, mainstream science culture, not necessarily mainstream culture. Everyday people, people who watch TV and go on YouTube, and all of us, we enjoy the stuff. We know there's meaning and these sort of things, and even the prickly people. I'm sure Richard Dawkins has a TV show he watches and enjoys the meaning and the lessons from that sort of thing. So we all have this sort of meaning aspect, but we interpret it differently, and ultimately, the people who are more prone to thinking in generalities and the more artsy right brain side, will, find this difference here, and the people on the other side will find that ultimately things can be reduced to prickles and aspects and focuses, and that I like what Alan Watts says. It's not just prickles or goo; it's prickles and goo. Life is made up of both. There's a lot of both floating around. There's a lot of prickle goos and goo prickles and vague specifics and specific vagues. That's life. So what we were saying, it's a good idea to keep things, to not create another system that will get bogged down in and become too stuck and too trapped in a particular way of thought, or as a connotation I think you picked up on when I said philosophy, a new philosophy, I don't know. Well, I understand that kind of description of philosophy as some kind of thing, sort of like, as if we're we're talking about creating some kind of new categorical imperative or something like that. Yeah, that's not what we would want to do at all. We would just want some kind of more open attitude towards life, towards reality that will help us understand things more inclusively. And inclusive means general, but also inclusive means specific. It's according for it. It's accounting for both aspects of life as a whole, and it in itself is no aspect of that, if that makes sense. The pathless path is all paths and thus no path in specific. The ties that bind are not the objects in themselves and all of that. Synergy, these sort of things. It's very interesting how all these things get connected to a general philosophy of emptiness, but not emptiness in a nihilistic form, but more in the more artistic description of emptiness as the open canvas of creation and destruction. So yeah, I mean, this leads into many other things, but I guess since we're on the topic of Krishnamurti, I thought I would just bring it up a little bit. So, Prickles and Goos and New Paradigms. That's the subject of today. There's a lot to talk about with this. There's so many directions that it can be going, and honestly, I think talking about it here is a great start, and sharing our ideas here is a great start. And it's already really beginning, because if you're in that attitude where you're not trying to develop a new specific philosophy, a new object, a new thing, but moreover you're just trying to see both aspects, the generals and the specifics. If we're in that in-between state, that balanced observing state, well then, I think we're already grounded in that new, quote-unquote, style of thinking, because it's very old, it's timeless, it just is, and that isness is a thing that can help us understand many processes of life much better, including contemporary science and beyond. So, that being said, I guess it comes down to these questions. How do we do this here and now? So if we're doing it with baby steps, we're doing, alright, right here, when we blog, when we talk, when we make videos, when we do this, how can we, let's say, tackle some problems? Some problems that particular myths and I call them myths and dogma. People get pissed when I say this, but the mythos of modern scientific thinking is that everything is awesomely, infinitely reducible all the way down. That's all we need to know, because that's all there really is. It's the physicalist philosophy. How do we approach that with a reasonable, I guess you could say, argument? And I don't think we need to necessarily play their game and play specifics and all that, but it's good to understand their language and respond to it appropriately. So I guess, how do we respond to this sort of description of not needing to know the generalities? They're not important. To be general is not important. Only to be inclusive is important. Only to be specific is important. How do we respond to that? And there are many ways to do so, but I guess in discussion, I guess it'd be good to just bring up ways to do that, and bring up ways to move forward. The first thing that I think of is, I don't know if we can really stop this sort of thing until it has to be stopped, or as Thomas Kuhn often describes, the structure of scientific revolutions are usually the case where there's a critical mass of counter ideas, or I guess you could say punching holes in a theory until it just can't stand anymore. And in that case, then I would say, well, are we going to have to wait then? Are we going to have to keep doing what we're doing, which is part of the process? Keep punching these little holes until they notice, until they have to acknowledge generalities. That may be what we have to do, but we might as well start doing it. But yeah, I think it'll come to the point where the working theories will be ones that account for generalities, the synergy. The theories that fall short of advancement and development of understanding, such as ones that don't account for it, ones that are more linear, will fail to be useful anymore. So, at any rate, I guess I'll stop here. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your response video.